Welcome to Wired Politics Lab, a show about how tech is changing politics. I'm Leah Feiger, the senior politics editor at Wired. Today, we're talking to one of the biggest political streamers on Twitch, Hasan Piker. With over 2 million followers and streams that average 8 hours a day, Hasan is proof that the platform is a lot bigger than just video games. In the case of Hasan and many other political streamers, the platform has basically filled the void of cable news for tons of people around the world. He's become increasingly popular as more and more people are turning to the platform for news and political analysis. Today, Wired senior reporter McKenna Kelly and I are going to look at how Twitch streamers and even Hasan himself could affect the 2024 election. Hasan, hello.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you're here. You know, when McKenna and I first started talking about this episode, we jokingly started referring to you as Gen Z's Walter Cronkite. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's better than what I reference myself as, so I'll take it.
What's that?
I tell people, especially in mainstream media, when they ask like what I'm doing, I say I'm like Rush Limbaugh without brainworms or opiate addiction.
Joe Rogan's leftist uncle?
Maybe. I mean, what I do is quite similar to radio broadcasts, especially in like right-wing radio broadcasts. Like those guys just like sit there 6 to 8 hours every day, just making your grandparents more racist by the moment.
And you're streaming on average of 8 hours a day, doing the opposite, ostensibly?
Exactly. Like I'm trying to reach the younger generation so they can stop their grandparents from listening to Rush Limbaugh. Well, God, stop Rush Limbaugh.
No.
But
bad.
But I don't know. Am I allowed to say stuff like that on
Absolutely,
Wired?
yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I hate Rush Limbaugh.
So I guess what exactly would you call yourself? Are you a journalist? Are you a pundit?
I say I'm a political commentator.
Okay.
I don't really do a lot of journalism in the sense that like I don't go out and do on the field reporting, or if I do, it's very rare. Like I went to the UCLA student encampments, and I guess that's technically under the confines of journalism.
You were on the ground?
Yeah, but beyond that, it's mostly just aggregating news from friends who are journalists, who are breaking their stories, talking to investigative reporters. Basically like if Jake Tapper knew how to work with the internet, and instead of having like producers and people that write his scripts and stuff, he was just like kind of spitballing every day.
Scrolling through Twitter, live reactions.
Exactly. And like aggregating news from people in his audience.
Sure.
That kind of gets into the question I wanted to bring up, which was, so you're not a journalist, you just mentioned that, but you do share information. So when breaking news is breaking, like how do you make sure you're not spreading misinformation?
I think for the most part, like I have certain boundaries, like when a mass shooting occurs, and obviously it's daily, right?
Welcome to America.
Yeah, unfortunately. There are certain occurrences of like developing news and breaking news where I have like a couple markers that I won't touch, like immediately identifying the shooter, right? Like, because at this point, I've been doing this for 10 years and I know the telltale signs that like misinformation is about to start spreading in a certain direction, unless, you know, right-wing commentators immediately start claiming falsely that like the shooter is trans. I will usually just like wait to verify from an official body of the government, whether it's like the police department or whether it's mainstream reporting happening on it. Beyond that, I have trusted sources, obviously, investigative reporters breaking their stories as it's like happening, as it's developing. It's not necessarily simply just like aggregating information from the ground like an OSINT account. Like I'm not just doing open source intelligence aggregation. I'm actually waiting for reporters to break certain stories or actually give confirmations, State Department spokespersons and whatnot. But beyond that, when that sort of stuff is actually materializing in real time, like global conflict.
Yeah, I want to hear a real life example here.
Yeah, there was the Israeli embassy strike, like Israel struck the Iranian embassy compound, and then Iran was slated to retaliate. And when that retaliation was announced, there was a lot of misinformation happening. There were a lot of people that were like, Twitter actually had, on that day, I think, unleashed the Grok AI trending aggregation.
Thank you, Elon, for just making that day a mess.
And one of on the trending tab, it literally was saying like Iran nukes Tel Aviv, like Tel Aviv is on fire, and I was just like, this is so insane. So I obviously focused more so on that day. I focused more so on the misinformation. So It's always looking at everything that's going on and exercising a healthy amount of skepticism and trying to educate people on media literacy, like critically analyzing what you see in front of your eyes. So like when someone will send misinformation, I use that as a teachable moment. I pull it up and I say like, this right here is from an account that is, Freedom Lover 69. And, this is a crypto bot account. Like obviously this person is not in Tel Aviv. Like,
you mean they don't have the secrets of the JFK assassination?
Yeah, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what's going on any better than you. And a lot of OSINT accounts do this too. They are serial abusers of this kind of stuff.
It became wild. The OSINT accounts that have popped up in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there. I mean, it sounds like you have a system for sorting through all of that. What would you look for as your trusted places that you're going to for this info? I mean, you mentioned police departments, which I am a little skeptical
I was
of.
surprised about that too.
Oh, something I forgot to mention, like mainstream media and police departments and things of that nature, I always look at. I watch a lot of Fox
you got to see what
News.
they're saying.
Yes, exactly. I obviously have biases. And I will openly reveal my biases. I have no issue.
Stay tuned for 5 minutes from now.
Yeah, no, I have no issue saying like what I believe. And I actually think that like objective neutrality, even in reporting, can oftentimes be maybe used as a shield because it's like no one is ever going to be fully neutral. You guys have worked in the media for quite some time. You know when you write a story and then maybe your editor, I'm not saying you do this, but like maybe your editor massages the narrative a little bit and then slaps
McKenna,
on a...
do I?
Do you No, you don't massage the narrative. You make my words better.
Aw,
yeah, and you make the structure actually
very
readable.
Yeah,
a plug for editors everywhere.
That's a good relationship, obviously. But like what I'm talking about is like when an editor is like very obviously getting information from management to be like, let's hit this story in a different way, right? Like you did real reporting, and then the outcome, especially because everybody only sees the title, the outcome and the title is like entirely different. I'm not one of those like, mainstream media is always lying to you. That's why, subscribe to my blog. Like I'm not one of those dudes. Like I think
those are the guys on Twitter.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that like real journalism is still happening. Otherwise, we have no way of understanding what the hell's going on.
I'm curious. Has there been a time where you said something wrong on stream? Because like we would issue a correction if we did something wrong, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you do?
I issue a correction. Well,
what does that look like though?
It's exactly the same. First of all, the stream is in real time, right? So it's live streamed and then it's repackaged for YouTube consumption for a broader audience. So in that time frame, if there's like any new information that comes on, because I'm doing like breaking coverage sometimes, I will of course tell my editors like, don't put this in there. This part is wrong, or issue a correction on this, that sort of thing. There have been instances where I've gotten things wrong. Like I made wrong predictions. Very famously, I said, Russia will never invade Ukraine.
You did not.
No, I did.
That's so bad.
Oh, no, I did. I said...
When was that?
That was literally a day before Russia invaded Ukraine.
I'm dying.
I said, Russia will never invade Ukraine because Putin is a bad person, but he's not a mad person. Going back to the rational actor theory. And that trying to invade and permanently annexing a nation state whose entire statehood mythos revolves around not being Russia with 44 million people is impossible. This will be Afghanistan and Vietnam on steroids for Russia. This will be devastating for the Russian economy. Vladimir Putin would never make, would be insane to make such a psychopathic decision.
How did you pull that one back?
I apologize. I said I was wrong. My analysis, I still stand on it. Like I still think it's correct that it was an insane decision. It's an insane decision that genuinely, obviously hurt not only just the Russian economy, but like Russia in general. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are dying, wounded, millions displaced in the process. It's an absolute devastation, unimaginable cruelty from Vladimir Putin that I thought would be absolutely mad.
No, and it's interesting that you got into it on the platform. I want to get into the platform and politics a little bit here. You really kind of first rose to prominence, at least on a larger scale, back in 2020 when you played a really popular video game called Among Us with AOC. And you did it again in 2023, right?
Yeah.
Why Twitch? And why is that the right place for politics streaming right now in 2024?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the right place for politics streaming in general. The original reason as to why I started on Twitch was because I play video games. And at the time, I was at the Young Turks. Turks, and I would write as a contributor to the Huffington Post, and I saw the space, the gaming space specifically, and like YouTube as a right-wing infested shithole, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yes.
I don't know. What ends up happening is in like 2018, I'm like, I play video games all the time. I should be maxing it out, like a right-wing podcaster. I was like, I gotta be min-maxing. I gotta be more efficient with my time. I'm playing Fortnite with my friends who are already like journalists, commentators themselves, like Felix Biederman, Noah Colwyn. Like, I'm already playing Fortnite with them. Might as well strap on a camera to my PlayStation and just like broadcast these conversations on Twitch. So that's how I started playing Fortnite and talking about like Israel, Palestine, over getting victory royales. I wanted to show that like you can be a person who has fun and still be a leftist, still be a progressive. And it's not just like being a progressive isn't about like showing people how moral you are by the type of content that you consume. And I wanted to basically put that forward as a juxtaposition to like what people oftentimes were seeing and, use my privilege for good in that regard. And then 2020, as you said, COVID happened, and also simultaneously the George Floyd protests were happening. And I had been a advocate for Black Lives Matter long before liberals had gotten on that train. So a lot of people were like, oh, this guy has been saying this stuff for years. Okay, maybe I'll tune into him. And that's when I started growing rapidly because I went full time in 2020. And honestly, just kind of happened to be a perfect platform for me and my style of coverage. I never would have thought that it would get to the point that it got to in size. I literally just did it because I thought better use of my time. I'm awful off script. I would always script my videos at the time. And I didn't know how to speak uninterrupted for, a long period of time. And now I, as you guys can tell, never shut the fuck up. So I guess it worked.
8 hours a day will do that. You are in like high training for this.
Yeah.
I am curious about Twitch and like streaming as a platform, though. Like the fact that this is a long form conversation where you're able to have like a nuanced conversation about issues with your audience. I feel like that really is, a boon to you and like trying to spread, your message and trying to bring people over side.
It can be good and it can be very bad at the same time. I think that this is an old Joe Rogan thing that he used to say that I think is kind of correct. He used to always talk about how like a 3-hour podcast uninterrupted is always going to have moments that are clippable that can like make people feel like you're saying something that you're not actually intending to say. Which for his case, for many other things that he believes,
Joe Rogan for 3 hours straight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I used to be a big fan of Joe Rogan, for the record, like back in the day. And then I think it was the Milo Yiannopoulos interview where I was like, what? Like, that's a Nazi that you brought onto your show to be like, this guy's awesome.
They're just chilling.
Yeah. Like he played a big role in a lot of those guys' careers, which is crazy. Anyway, but he was technically right on that, right? If you have this uninterrupted, unmanicured, very real conversation for 8 hours on an issue that's very divisive, on issues that are obviously polarizing, I think that that environment definitely lends itself to great conversations that are very educational for people that see like what the talking points are. And it's like a way, I guess, to kind of test your ideas a little bit. But it can also lead to people coming in with anonymous accounts, like a million different sock accounts that they create specifically to antagonize over and over and over again. It's susceptible to hate raids and all of this stuff that people can just like frustrate you and then clip a moment of your response when you're like finally saying like, oh my God, please stop. And that can lead to unproductive conversations, lack of civility and such. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. To talk about being brigaded and all of that, I am curious. You don't have to subscribe to your Twitch channel to use the chat.
No.
Yeah. And I think, is that like a conscious decision that you made, inviting these people who may disagree with you into this conversation?
Yeah. I don't mind people who disagree with me being a part of the conversation at all for two reasons. The first reason is because I had certain opinions that I've changed over time. I'm very open about it. I used to have relatively transphobic takes like 10 years ago, and I learned, I'm a massive advocate for trans people now. And I use that as an example as to like how everyone can change, right? Like people can reflect on their prior conditioning. We're all susceptible. This is something that I try to teach definitely like a lot of young leftists as well, who are, very early on and have the zealotry of a convert, of a recent convert, right? Where they're just like, oh, this person said something, it's a microaggression, fuck this person, like this person is evil. evil. And it's like, we all understand that these systems that we exist under are white supremacist, transphobic, misogynistic, homophobic, and therefore, obviously, the outcome of such things is going to be that the people are learning implicit biases that they have to unlearn. So I want to foster discussion, especially when people are coming in charitably and asking questions to be like, I don't fully understand what's going on here. Can you explain it to me?
It feels a little bit like you're kind of capitalizing on this moment of fragmented media as well. I mean, you're just talking about forming these deep connections with your followers and viewers, like parasocial relationships, as you will, that do kind of harken back. I know we're making fun of it, but like the Walter Cronkite relationships of decades past.
Well, parasocial relationships is another thing where it's like, I find it to be very unhealthy, which is precisely the reason why I also talk against that quite a bit as well. My goal always is to try and get people to see a different perspective of the world that they've never been initiated on, they've never seen. If I can get someone to relearn a certain bigotry, a certain bias they might have had, and change their opinion on that, then that's it. That's my job. That's what I want to do. If I can then get people to be more active in community organizing and local organizing and union organizing, then that's phenomenal.
Listeners, we're going to take a quick break and be back with Hasan in just a moment.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's never held elected office, but he's still running for president.
There's nothing in the United States Constitution that says that you have to go to Congress first and then Senate second, or be a governor before you're elected to the presidency of the United States.
A conversation with RFK Jr. on the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back with our conversation with Hasan Piker. So in terms of being active, do you have any more games planned with politicians this year?
I'd be down, probably. It's just that comes across like a highlight from the perspective of mainstream media, because like that's a notable political figure. But like, I think that my impact is probably a little bit understated there, and way more important when it comes to like a Chipotle unionizing in Lansing, Michigan. Or I went to the UCLA encampment, and all the SJP and JVP students that I met with were like, I'm here because I started watching you in 2020 and you really broadened my horizon. Now I'm in college and that's why I'm doing this activism.
I want to get to like your advocacy work, but on the politician side of it all, your viewers love you, and what you say could definitely impact their votes, don't you think?
Maybe, probably. I think so. I mean, I do always urge them to go and vote. I'm a big time advocate for at least down ballot voting. I think that like local elections are very important. The way I see it is like the top of the ticket.
Let's talk about the top of the ticket.
Yeah, although that gets the most attention, it is probably in your immediate interest the least significant part of the conversation, I think. Primaries, in my opinion, are way more important than general elections for the most part as things stand, even though we have even less voter participation in the primaries, obviously, and that's a massive problem. I think local elections are very important and genuinely have the capacity to like, it can mean life or death for a lot of people in like marginalized communities when you have like one Democratic state legislator who will put their body on the line sometimes.
For sure,
like,
and we've seen that over the last couple of years alone. I mean, when we're talking about reproductive rights, I mean, there's so many instances of that, for sure.
And also ballot measures. I think that they're also very important.
So are you supporting any candidates this year?
No, not at all. I've been a big advocate of the uncommitted voting campaign as well against Joe Biden in the Democratic primaries. I'm an advocate of full-blown pressure on every aspect, right? I think that you have to demonstrate in the streets. I think that you have to demand divestment from your college campuses. You have to boycott certain products as long as it's like organized and not like some TikTok stuff, but like, an organized boycott with a clear-cut demand. You have to do all of that. Call your congresspersons. And then I think that the tip of that spear at the end of it is also to say like, I am not going to vote for you unless you fix this.
Well, but what you're talking about, though, is the primaries.
Yeah.
The real one is real soon. Now, the primaries aren't real. And obviously, that's a super important way to communicate. But we're like 5-ish months out from November right now.
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
I'm feeling devastation. That's what I'm feeling. I urged and lent support to Joe Biden in the last election. And there were a lot of promises that he had made in the last election on domestic policy, codifying Roe v. Wade, protecting abortion rights, on immigration. He had the first 100 days of immigration where he said that he was going to, figure out an amnesty plan. He was going to basically reverse everything that Donald Trump had done. And then he did none of that. And he then he's done some. I will say that his team Biden is impressively, particularly bad at A, communicating on social media in general, but B, communicating their wins. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. As someone who's an avid watcher and avid follower of everything that the Biden team is doing, there are a lot of, before Israel-Palestine, before October 7, there were plenty of moments where I would tell my audience a lot of the initiatives that the Biden White House has taken on had made this administration probably one of the most pro-labor administrations in contemporary American history. Yeah. Significantly more pro-labor than the Obama administration, mind you. I mean, we had an active sitting president participate in a picket. That is historic, right? When he went to the UAW, the UAW strikes. And there are so many opportunities like that where he did unique things. The bar is very low for Democrats. There is no bar for the Republicans. It's already in hell. But the bar is very, very low for the Democrats. And he did clear it on certain occasions, but they did not communicate it at all because they're so consistently fearful of the suburban voters that they are desperately trying to target. They're all plus 55, living in the suburbs. Sure. I mean, white. It definitely feels like they've created the prototype of each voter. And I mean, even the TikTok account is very hello, fellow kids. Yeah. It's cringy. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the difference between the Biden and other social media stuff is that right now they are so curated and working with so many creators that are well known, and it feels very scripted. Whereas when you have AOC on your Twitch stream, she comes off a lot more authentic.
Yeah, but AOC also is not 800 years old. She plays League and stuff. She already has internet brain rot. And you got to have that to be able to organically communicate with a younger audience.
I want to bring it back to voting though in this election. I completely understand why disaffected voters, young voters would feel like their only means of expressing their outrage, whether it's over the response to October 7th or something like that, would be to abstain their vote. But like Leah said, we're 5 months out. Is Trump better than Biden?
Absolutely not. I once again, I'm always going to be honest. No, I don't think that Trump would be better on Israel-Palestine. Half the reason why October 7 happened, not even half, 75% of the reason why October 7 happened is the Trump administration's genuine fuck-ups in terms of moving the embassy to Jerusalem. The Great March of Return happened under Trump's watch while the embassy was literally being televised. And then he assassinated Qasem Soleimani, a high-ranking Iranian figure in Iranian general. And all of that were severe escalations that turned this powder keg into, the perfect opportunity for an explosion. I know that he will be worse than Biden, but Biden is kind of pushing the limits of how much worse people can get, especially when it comes to American foreign policy. When you think about it, my point always is, I think that, vote with your conscience. Vote if you think that the lesser evil of voting is working for you. If it makes you feel better, go ahead, do that.
Does it make you feel better?
No.
So you're not going to be voting for Biden?
I don't know. I don't know if I'll be voting for Biden. I'll be honest, but I won't tell you not to. Do your thing. But the voting uncommitted campaign, I think, is a good way to openly stress the Democratic Party to get them to listen. When you have marginal victories in key states, right, by 20,000, 30,000.
No, the margins are teeny.
And you have that. And then in the primaries, you have your most active base of support, because the real uncommitted voters are just not going to vote in the primaries, right? When you have your committed voters go out to the primaries to vote on nothing, to simply tell you we are here, we would vote for you. You need to stop fucking this up. You need to stop aiding and abetting Israel in this way. When they say that, I think that any reasonable administration should look at that and go, we have to change. We have to change some stuff.
There is actually, and we haven't brought him up yet, there is technically another option here beyond not voting.
Oh my God, are you going to say RFK Jr.?
I mean, I'm really curious how you feel about him. I mean, you have 2.5 million followers. They're going to be talking about the election in the next little bit. You're going to be talking about the election in the next little bit. Yeah. What's the RFK of it all? Beyond the brainworms. I mean, I feel like we've done the brainworms.
Yeah.
It's tired.
For me, I love the Democratic Party. And the one thing that was missing was like a guy who believes that COVID was a conspiracy that Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese created together. I was like, how can I get...
I was personally responsible.
Yeah, how can I get... It's like, yeah, have you ever met an Ashkenazi Jewish person?
I don't know if that was... I mean, his anti-COVID conspiracy theories and rhetoric was just absolutely wild to watch. Yeah. Obviously culminating like 2022, comparing it to the Holocaust, like vaccine mandates, nuts. And obviously he's moved away from sharing a lot of these conspiracies in like recent weeks, months, as he's trying to get on the ballot everywhere. Where do you fall on this? Where do your viewers fall on this?
I mean, like I said, RFK Jr. is literally, if you're like, I love Biden's policies and I want someone who will have the identical policies except for like insane conspiracy theories on top of that. Because like RFK Jr. is a fascinating...
I don't know if it's the exact policies there. I'm going to push back on that.
He is so aligned with the exception of the stuff that we're thinking of where he's like very obviously very different. Like as far as like, you know, healthcare, COVID, stuff like that, he's like insane. But like his foreign
January
policy...
6th?
Oh, is he? I didn't even realize he was also an election denier. But I'm talking about like the white paper stuff.
He's inching towards, for sure.
Oh, okay. That's he's just maneuvering to win votes, right, from the Trump side. But like we're talking about policy white paper stuff. Like if you look at his like both communication when it comes to American foreign policy, his communication on like how to deal with the renewable energy crisis that we're facing, like how to deal with fossil fuels.
I mean, his environmental background is incredible. Like, for sure.
That's what I was going to say. I think RFK is entertaining to a certain degree. He's just like, not even actually. I think he's just more so like a media project, I would say. He's like picking up some votes from the Trump side and less votes from the Democratic Party side, I guess.
We don't actually know
is what
that.
they originally were saying.
Yeah,
It flip-flops.
It flip-flops all the time, and we did an episode on RFK, and my guess here is that he's actually going to end up taking more from the Biden side. Because Trump voters love Trump. Biden voters, like yourself and perhaps some of your viewers and the folks that we're talking about, are mad at some of the things that have been happening over the last few years.
Yeah, but like I'm never gonna tell someone to vote for Trump or RFK Jr. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't tell someone to vote for someone I don't believe in, right? Like I'm not gonna tell them to vote for someone if I don't believe them.
But I think it gets us back to honestly like how some of these presidential candidates, in addition to RFK, are going to be appealing to youth votes, which is again where you come in here.
Yeah, I think the youth they're not voting, right? And that's a byproduct of many different things: the electoral college, access to voting, and lack of universal ballot registration in certain places, no mail-in voting. Like voting is a complicated process by design to specifically stop young people, poor people, marginalized people from voting. The electoral college in and of itself is undemocratic, so that also causes a lot of people to not vote. We have some of the lowest voter participation out of any country, any OECD nation.
And I mean, every time that people have talked about the youth vote being like so high in the past, Obama era, et cetera, I don't know if it ever went actually like above 30% of eligible voters. Like that's still quite low.
That is unimaginably low. And there are a multitude of different reasons for it. But I think one of the major reasons for it is because if I'm young, I don't see anyone right now that is captivating me, that is like causing me to go out and vote. There was a guy, and even he was not able to get the young people to go out and vote. And I door knocked for him.
Were you talking about Bernie?
Sanders.
Yeah, there we go.
I door knocked for him, and I had conversations with people, and I tried to get them to go out and vote in the primaries. And like, especially the primary structure is just like, it's impossible to get people to go out and vote for someone. They feel so discouraged by the system.
Moving on from electoral politics, it seems very clear that you don't think, in some ways, that's not where you should be spending most of your time. I am curious, in your advocacy work and the fundraising, I noticed the Creators for Palestine thing that you're doing. Is that where you think you have the most impact?
I think that's one of the places. I just feel very... it's easy to get very discouraged, especially when you're constantly covering death and destruction and atrocities. And I always want to obviously use my privilege for good, but also do whatever I can. And obviously I can't build the Iron Dome over Gaza. So, this is the one thing that I can do, is to broaden people's awareness on this issue and to also fundraise directly by working with a lot of the charities on the ground. And that's precisely what I've been doing. My community raised $1.2 million and like immediately on like early October. I think it was like October 10th when I was like, we have to go and work with a lot of these charities on the ground. I worked with 4 of them specifically. And I knew that they could operate inside of the boundaries, like the limited boundaries that like Israel and the Western governments allow Palestinian charities to exist in. And now I'm back at it again with a bunch of other lovely content creators, and it's growing every day. I'm in the Discord server and there's like new content creators joining every day. Ian from Smosh just joined recently and it's great. You know, these people desperately need help. We're working with new charities as well, new organizations as well, including like Heal Palestine. So like we're trying to look for charities on the ground that are actively working on the ground right now.
Talking about other creators, there is a lot of drama on Twitch. And
yes, always.
I'm curious, you know, do you get stuck in it?
I will entertain drama from time to time, specifically because...
What a way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, specifically because, like, I am human after all. I am weak. And also because I think that that's, like, what a lot of people in the margins, that's what they care about. They care about the drama. So I'll use that as a launching point, as a jump off point to like go back to more serious news coverage. So like, you know, I bring in the eyeballs for playing video games, or I bring in the eyeballs of the collaboration, and then I try to refocus their interest on something that's like genuinely important. And for every, you know, 3,000 people that come in just for the drama, if 500 stick around to hear my coverage on what's going on in Rafah, right? And then that's great. That's what I'm trying to do. The reason why I'm trying to grow always isn't necessarily because like I'm on my Sigma grind shit. I'm always trying to fucking max out on my revenue. I'm rev maxing. Like, no, it's also because like I wanna bring awareness to certain causes and try to instill some charitability in a broader audience that will then listen to what I have to say on certain issues instead of going, oh, I hate that guy. That guy's like a socialist with a nice car. Fuck that guy.
So turning these like dramatic moments and like beefs with other creators into teaching moments for your audience.
I try to, yeah. Like the last round of this was like so laughable to have this conversation and like with adults, but
Are we bringing up Destiny? Is that what
yeah, I was about to say like
I wasn't going to name names.
Yeah, no, there's a content creator who like loves debating, doesn't really care about any of the things that he debates about, but like he will assume like ridiculous stances, ridiculous positions. He's relatively skilled in rhetoric, not necessarily very knowledgeable on the issues, but rhetoric goes a very long way in debates. But beyond that, this dude is very edgy. Loves saying gamer words, the N-word specifically.
Recently, and I feel like that happened recently.
It happened like 2 weeks ago where he said the N-word on a podcast.
And 2024.
And we have people getting really upset about the word cracker.
Yes, which is really funny because like that is definitely a very like reactionary aspect of the gaming space in general, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean the power dynamics there are questionable at best.
Yeah, and it's been going on. It's been going on for like the past like 5-6 days now where everyone is like, yeah, you can't, anti-white slurs are unacceptable. What do you mean? Like you don't care about anti-white racism. And I use that as an opportunity to try to explain to people like the etymology of the word and like the power dynamics and the history of chattel slavery. So it's not just like drama per se. It's not just me being like, that guy says the N-word. You're listening to a guy who says the N-word, and I don't hear you criticizing him saying the N-word. You left that shit off, but then you fucking spend a ridiculous amount of time talking about how dangerous it is to make anti-white racism permissible. I mean, all three of us are white in this room. It's laughable, right? It's a laughable thing to be like, someone called me a cracker. Oh no.
I've been called so many worse things.
Exactly, right? And it's like, it's so obvious what's going on, but I do think that a lot of people get duped. Like good-natured people that have some biases get duped into like reactionary framing on that issue. It's like bullying. It's wrong. It's bad, sure, but it's like when you make that comparison, when you flatten it out and say like this is all bigotry and it's all unacceptable, and the people saying that are literally also saying the N-word simultaneously, I'm like, well, you don't think that kind of bigotry is unacceptable at all. Kind of seems like you're making this a talking point because you want to expose hypocrisy where no such hypocrisy exists. So that's, you know, I try to use that as a teachable moment for other people who will listen.
Who are the other streamers that you do like that are focusing on politics coverage right now?
And doing it well.
There's a lot of great people. You have Sean the Black, Frogan, Caroline Kwan, Central Committee. There are a lot of like Twitch streamers specifically that also do political coverage. Carter's another one. Gremlo. So there are definitely content creators that are doing this sort of thing. But beyond that, I would say, in the YouTube space, there's a lot of essayists that are great. They write a lot of YouTube essays. They do a lot of YouTube commentary. They're great. There's a lot of great people overall. None of them engage in debates, which is great. I hate people.
Only for you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I
actually
do
spoke
debates
to you
for-
in 2021 about the Sam Cedar, Steven Crowder debate.
Oh.
And like how stupid it was.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, debates are just purely for entertainment. I think it can have an educational component to it for sure. But overall, it's not about like whose facts are solid. It's more so about who says them in a more solid way. And also it's the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over to your side in the margins. But overall, it's not activism. It's not, doing something meaningful. It's not even like genuinely learning about an issue. It's more so learning the talking points.
Which honestly makes Twitch so interesting as a platform for all of this, because this was not what it was made to do.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is a good point to end our chat on. Thank you so much for talking about all of this with us. And let's take a quick moment and then come back for Conspiracy of the Week.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Larson, the reviews director of Pitchfork, and this podcast is supported by Pitchfork Music Festival. Pitchfork Music Festival will take place July 19th through the 21st at Union Park in Chicago, Illinois. This year's lineup features Jamie XX, Alanis Morissette, Black Pumas, Carly Rae Jepsen, Brittany Howard, J. Paul, Muna, Jessie Ware, 100 Gex, and many more. The festival also features diverse vendors as well as specialty record, poster, and craft fairs, and works to support local businesses while promoting the Chicago arts and food communities as a whole. For more information on tickets and lineup, visit pitchforkmusicfestival.com.
Welcome back. We're here to do Conspiracy of the Week, where both our guests are going to bring me their favorite conspiracy they've come across this week, or that's just sort of on your minds. And I'm going to pick my favorite. And I don't know what they are already. So please tell me, dazzle me, basically. McKenna, go ahead.
I feel so bad because mine last week was really good.
It was really good.
But mine this week, I was surfing the conspiracy subreddit.
Sure.
And I saw King Charles's royal portrait has been put out into the world.
That was a wild portrait.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
It feels almost like an ode to colonialism, as it were.
Right.
He also looks like he's in hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so there's people who are kind of taking the hell thing a bit too literally making demonic assumptions that like this man is possessed. He's like part of this global, the globalism thing.
Yes,
the
royals
schemes.
are globalists conspiracy is well trodden, but always good.
Yeah, a haunted portrait.
Haunted portrait. Okay, that's actually a really good one. I didn't even think about that one.
That
It's
wasn't bad at
related
all.
to conspiracies. I like that one.
Okay, I didn't realize it was supposed to be like a current one. I mean, I got immediately, I'm in New York. The two things I thought about, especially being in One World Trade Center, was what happened on Tower 7. Like, how did Tower 7 fall? A question that is on my mind at all times. I'm not like jet fuel can't melt steel beams kind of guy, but it is kind of odd that, Tower 7 fell. Who knows?
You're edging into 9/11 truther territory.
That is the one. I'm not like we did it deliberately and then, so that we could do global war or whatever. I'm not like, I don't go to that length.
Yikes.
Or that it was like a fake or staged, or that we did it like we blew up the towers.
For our listeners, Hasan does not believe that.
Yeah, I don't believe that. But Tower 7, kind of weird.
Allegedly.
Very allegedly. Really hardcore allegedly there.
Tower 7, I don't know what happened. I will go out and investigate later.
Oh, good. We'll report your findings back.
When I leave.
I feel like we've gotten a little glimpse into the conspiracy corner of your mind here.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to give the win this week to McKenna.
Wow.
Well, at least it was a relevant one. It's a new one. Mine is like an old one. An old but gold.
Hasan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me,
Yeah,
guys.
this was great.
This was great.
Where can all of our listeners find you besides Twitch?
I'm live on Twitch every day at twitch.tv/HasanAbi from 11 a.m. Pacific time all the way to like 8 p.m. 7 days a week. And beyond that, I'm Hasan D. Piker on TikTok and on Instagram, and Hasan the Hun on Twitter.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Hasan.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Wired Politics Lab. If you like what you heard today, make sure to follow the show and rate it on your podcast app of choice. We also have a newsletter, which McKenna writes each week. The link to the newsletter and the Wired reporting we mentioned today are in the show notes. If you'd like to get in touch with us with any questions, comments, or show suggestions, please write to politicslab@wired.com. That's politicslab@wired.com. We're so excited to hear from you. Wired Politics Lab is produced by Jake Harper. Jake Loomis is our studio engineer. Amar Lal mixed this episode. Stephanie Kariuki is our executive producer. Jordan Bell is our executive producer of development. And Chris Bannon is the global head of audio at Condé Nast. And I'm your host, Leah Feiger. We'll be back in your feeds with a new episode next week. Thanks for listening.
How does AI even work? Where does creativity come from? What's the secret to living longer? TED Radio Hour explores the biggest questions with some of the world's greatest thinkers. They will surprise, challenge, and even change you. Listen to NPR's TED Radio Hour wherever you get your podcasts.